The following is a presentation of the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
From the birthplace of modern winemaking, Sonoma, California, welcome to The Winemakers. Local experts Sam Couturi, Bart Hansen, and Brian Casey, along with host John Myers, invite you to listen in as they discuss all facets of winemaking. So sit back, pour yourself a glass, and let's hear what the guys have to say this week.
Oh, that was a good pour, Brian. A very, 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 very good pour for a Napa Cabernet. Beautiful.
Getting a little spoiled today, John.
You think so? Hey, everybody. Welcome to The Winemakers. I'm John Myers with, of course, Bart Hansen and Brian Casey. Sam is on special assignment today, and we are with a man who pretty much needs no introduction or titles or anything. Welcome, Andy Beckstoffer, to the podcast. How you doing today?
Doing great. Springtime in the Napa Valley. Best place to be.
No kidding. It's a beautiful day here, too.
Yeah.
I mean, it is just, the spring has come so rapidly.
Yeah.
It's like all of a sudden it's summer.
Yeah.
And, you're a lucky man. You're living here, and this is your office. We're over here on Con Creek Road, and beautiful spot in the world, isn't it?
Beautiful spot. We're going to stay.
You think so?
Can you tell us a little history about this house?
This house? Well, this property was originally owned by Beaulieu Vineyard. They bought it in 1928, and they called it BV number 3. And there was an old house on this property when we bought it. We bought it in 1989, and decided to move our farming offices over here. So we wanted to sort of fit the character of the place and sort of say something about who we were and the way we looked at stuff.
Yeah.
Now, we had farmed for and been involved with Inglenook and Beaulieu for a long time. And so the basic model was the old Child's house over at Inglenook.
Right.
So we went there, but we also went around the Napa Valley looking for different colors and schemes and roofings and all that kind of stuff. And then we built this place in, I think it was 1991.
Okay.
1991. And we wanted it from the outside to look like it, had been here forever, and on the inside to be very efficient.
Right.
But we went all over the county, if you will, looking for old stuff. If you'll notice, like these doors here, they don't fit.
Right.
But they came from an old architectural salvage company in Berkeley.
Right.
And the same thing with the hardware and all of those kind of things,
That's
as
awesome.
well as some light chambers in an Art Nouveau style.
Did you get to pick these doors out yourself?
I did.
Excellent.
But the thing was, they were all painted. We had no idea what they were.
Right.
They were just the size of the doors we wanted, but that walnut burl, we had no idea was there.
Yeah.
Then we just started to clean it
That's awesome.
up.
I
Started
love
cleaning it up.
architectural salvage places.
Yeah.
They had plenty in Chicago when I was there. And
Yeah.
we'd go, you'd find anything there.
All sorts of stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah.
There's a place around here now up off Petrified Forest Road called Mountain Home.
Yes.
Mountain Home, right? That guy has some unbelievable stuff if you're looking for things.
Is that
I
right?
mean, really, really unbelievable old stuff. And it's a resort now, too,
Right.
which he's done in that style. But he has just yards and yards of old doors and windows and stuff.
I had no idea. I've seen that sign a million times. And that's what that is. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Hey, also, in your beautiful office here, I see you're proudly displaying the flag of Virginia. That's where you're from originally. Is that correct?
I'm a Virginian living in California.
There you go. Okay. How's that going for
I
you?
probably shouldn't say that.
Well, didn't you wonder, Bart, where the accent came from?
I have to admit, I did cheat to look to see and did know you were from Virginia.
Hasn't quite lost it in 50 years, I think, of being
No.
here in Napa, right?
Oh, you go home and it gets thicker,
Right.
and you come back, you just sort of renew the old history. Yeah.
And your family was in farming in Virginia.
No,
They were not.
they were not.
So what was your childhood like? Or, you know what I mean? What was your background from there, if you don't mind sharing?
My father was in the lumber and millwork business.
Okay.
And he built houses, and he he supplied everything. That was the days before the big box stores.
Right.
So Daddy would start with the floor joists and he'd end with the roof joists, and they would do everything else. And he could make cabinets and he could do everything. So, but it was lumber and millwork. That's what my family did back there.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the elephant in the room sitting to my left. I mean, we haven't really introduced, I think, him on this podcast properly.
No, not quite yet.
Andy Beckstoffer is probably the most well-known grape grower in California, if not the United States. And probably most of our listeners are familiar with the Tokelon Vineyard, which any of us that have worked in restaurants or been wine lovers for any period of time around here have had some of these incredible wines. But he's also got other things going on in Mendocino and Lake County. Kind of interested myself. There's so many things to talk about with you. It almost is overwhelming to me in some ways. I mean, sort of like when we were with, Ren, or even talking to Tor in some ways, that the history of Napa Valley. I mean, you've seen everything. You were here in, I think, '69, came over here but you know what I was curious about is you kind of came over here and got entrenched in the farming and vineyards, but when you were going to school, like high school and college, what did you think you were going to be doing when you left college?
Well, my parents were in the basically residential building business, and my degree, my undergraduate degree, was construction management in the engineering department. I thought I would build things. Yeah. That's what I planned to do, is to build things.
Now you get to grow things.
And that was the shift at one point, which fit a little bit. But basically, that's what I thought I would do. And when I got out of school, first of all, I'm one of 8 kids, and I'm number 2. And so I'll never forget the day my dad said to me, you can't come in the business. You're pretty smart. You'll do fine, but I'm not sure about your brothers and sisters.
Wait, and he said this to you not in front of them?
No.
Yeah.
No. And that was great. So I went to work for the telephone company, and I was in Washington, D.C., and then I went in the Army. I was 2 years in the Army, stationed at the Presidio of San Francisco.
Nice. No way. Nice duty.
It was nice duty. It was the kind of thing that I'll never forget. We went out on our bivouac, the final thing. I was an officer in the ROTC. And we came back, and they said, stop. We're just going to stay on the bus. We're changing all of your assignments because of whatever, I don't know. I mean, in those days, it was the Berlin, not the Berlin Wall, but they wouldn't let them in through Berlin, the big march to get people in Berlin. So it changed everything.
Right.
And so they came back and they asked us, where would you like to go? And I didn't have any idea, but I had a buddy from Santa Barbara, Mike Rutter. And so he said, well, you want to go to the Presidio of San Francisco, or you want to go to Fort Lewis, Washington? So I put down Presidio of San Francisco, Fort Lewis second, and I got it. So I came out here for 2 years and ran the motor pool. And that was really important because, the two things about the military then, at least, and this is 1963, it was 19, I graduated 1961. This is 1961. If you were retiring as an officer, and to a certain extent, if you were a E8, E6, E7, the highest ranks of enlisted, you get to pick your last post. So that all of these guys always picked a place that had a general hospital. And I think there's 8 general hospitals in the United States, one of which was Letterman General Hospital. Mm-hmm. So all these guys who had driven the generals in Korea, Vietnam was just started, E7s, E8s came and worked for me. And I learned a tremendous amount in those days. I learned very quickly that the sergeants run their army. And you never forget that. And sometimes it's the secretaries run the business. Yeah. But I spent 2 years here, went back, telephone company, then went to Dartmouth for an MBA.
Yeah. And is that one of the reasons that I think Hugh Blind sent you out here, was that you had already been out to the Bay Area?
No.
Or did you volunteer for that?
No. The thing is that after I got my MBA, Hugh Blind looked to expand their business. and they had some business. They had what was it? They had vermouth, I think, a Hublot vermouth or something. They bought it out of Bakersfield. They were associated with a guy named Lou Gomberg. You've heard the Gomberg.
The Gomberg. Yeah.
Lou said to them, I think United Vintners can be bought. And United Vintners is a co-op, it's a co-op of co-ops, but they owned Italian Swiss Colony in Inglenook. And Hublot had been in the wine business, but Harvey's Bristol Cream and Harvey's Sherry's, all foreign stuff.
Right.
So they said, let's take a look. So they sent me out here to do the analysis of that. Of the should we buy? And I can remember the president said to me, don't tell me it's a bad acquisition. I know that. He said, but tell me what we need to do to make it better. Huh. And so remember, this is 1969. Yeah. And so the only premium wine businesses then were Almaden and Parmesan. Yep. As high as it got. I mean, little bitty old Beaulieu or Christian Brothers. And so we figured that one grape, in those days, you sold your grapes and you got told what the price was in February afterwards. It just big fluctuations. And then the Allied Grape Growers, which was a co-op of co-ops, mainly oriented in the San Joaquin Valley, mostly had French Colombard. That was what they did. And so one was cut down the fluctuations, see if we can build a truly premium wine business, and 3, get access to the right grapes. So when we took that back, they said, well, see if we can do it. So I came out to see if we could do that and negotiate the purchase.
Yeah. And at this point, were you married? Because you've been married over 60 years, I think.
I was married in high school, I think.
Yeah. You think?
No, I was married. I've been married 60 some years. I married my junior year in college, but I was married, and I had 3 children. 3 children. When I married. No, I had 4 children. And I was married. Yeah. One more came after we came out here. Yeah.
Okay, so everyone came out with you. It wasn't like an exploratory thing where they said, go out there, take a look, and then come back and let us know.
No. The first trip was, to look to see, should we buy this place?
Yeah.
And then I'd been spending a lot of time on the road coming back and forth here. So once we decided to buy that, and then all of a sudden Beaulieu Vineyard became available, so we did that one. And so then I decided, I'm either going to go out there and live, I'm going to be here, but I can't spend the time coming back and forth. So they said, go out. And they had a guy who had just become the president of United Vintners, which is Italian Swiss and thing, and said, I'll teach you the marketing business. A guy named Vic Bonomo. Mm-hmm. And so I came out for that. But then, I keep on telling the story, but you can stop it any point you want.
No.
At that point, somebody in the United Farm Workers decided, since Hublot had bought Allied Grape Growers, which was all the co-ops all over California, hundreds of growers, that we could force all of them into the union. Mm-hmm. Now, we had a contract with Allied Grape Growers as part of the purchase deal that said we had to buy their grapes. We couldn't say no, and that was one of the French Colombard problems. But we couldn't convince them of that, so they boycotted us. And so I got the job of negotiating that settlement, and it kind of interesting. They wouldn't allow, the Allied Grape Growers wouldn't allow us to show Chavez and his group the contract. So I'd done that for too long, so this story's around. Jerry Cohen, who was their lawyer, was kind of a wild guy, but kind of fun to be with. I said, you come to my house and I'll show you the contract. I didn't tell anybody. And so he was to come over there, and I'll never forget, just to play with him. They were also, Jerry, big beer drinker. And so I just stacked the place with Ham's beer, which he was boycotting.
Hams.
And he started drinking, and he said, by the way, somebody else is coming. I said, well, Jerry, the deal was just me and you. She said, no, she's got to come. She's got to see. So Dolores Huerta came to my house. Now, I don't know if you guys remember, but she was the bad one. Cesar was a bit of a saint. Yeah. So she knocked on the door. Betty took the kids upstairs, and she came, and we met, and I showed them the contract. And a week later, we settled the deal. But we had a set. We wanted to expand the vineyards here to grow Cabernet Sauvignon. And this all seems so impossible today, but Napa Valley was not Cabernet country. It was not hospitality, the wine house. It wasn't anything like that. And we couldn't convince any of these farmers to plant Cabernet. They said, that's crazy. I get less money than Johnsburg Riesling and less yield. So I went around and knocked on doors. I developed the economics of prime varietal vineyards, and I would come to you and Chase Manhattan Bank in New York and say, and you say, fine, who's going to farm? So we had to set up a farming company. And I could get farmers who were here to farm 100 acres the old way, but I needed to get somebody to farm 500 acres the new way. And we thought things needed to change. We thought viticulture needed to change. So it set up this company, just began to set it up. And then we signed with the union, with the United Farm Workers. And the Hublon people said, no, we've got to control it. You got to go run it. So I got out of the United Vintners marketing business and into running this little company we call Vinifera Development Corporation. Wow. And it's kind of interesting. In those days, it's just, when you think about it, it seems impossible. There were 2 trained viticulturists in the Napa Valley. Right. One was Dewey Anderson at Christian Brothers. The other was Charlie Williams, who ended up at We came in, and we immediately brought 3 more, plus a new vineyard manager of the college education.
From where?
Well, Bob Steinhauer had been with a guy named Roy Harrison. They would work for Shenley down in Fairfield, and they experienced the union. Yep. Kirby Kwasnick and Ron Lopopolo were recent graduates of Fresno State. Okay. So it was those guys. And then Steve Yates, who was the vineyard manager, was from Cal Poly, but all college people there.
So young and eager to learn and
science-based.
That's it.
Right?
Yeah. That's the big difference. Science-based. I mean, it's kind of thing like, who the hell does that kid think he is coming in here? Think about telling us how to do stuff. We've been doing it forever.
Yeah. Right.
So, but...
Was that met with old-time resistance?
I think they disliked Hublon more than they disliked me.
Okay, there you go.
But I was corporate, and I'd come in and for example, the people at Beaulieu, the Madame wouldn't spend any money at all on anything. They had like 700 acres of vineyard, and it was Andre and a Hispanic manager and bunch of managers, and we came in and took it over, which Andre didn't like, but began to put modern viticulture in it, and plus we expanded that to 3,000 acres to farm, which he couldn't have handled either. And also he also had a farm, Inglenook and Beaulieu. I don't know, there's all sorts of stories of romances broken and all that crap. I don't know, between the Madame de Pin and John Daniel, I don't know. But they wanted no part of Inglenook, so we took that over, and that was controversial. But we started farming in a big way then. And the other part of that that's interesting when you talk about the development of the Napa Valley is that we weren't getting paid as growers. And the only people who talked about pricing were the North Coast grape growers, and they priced Napa, Sonoma, and Mendocino Cabernet all the same price. Yeah. It's all commodity pricing. And then in 1973, I think the price of Cabernet here was $800, and so in 74 was $400.
$800 a ton?
$800 a ton. The $400 a ton.
I thought he was going to say a lot less, actually.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah.
It went back. It went down by 76. I went to 300. Yeah. So one of the things I remember that the growers had no idea their costs. And then again, you see my engineering and MBA coming in practice. I mean, they figured their cost did not include anything for the farmer. No depreciation, no way to replace their equipment, anything like that. Yeah. And I can remember Bob Mondavi was saying, we're friends of the farmers. We're paying. I said, Bob, you're not even paying us a cost. He said, what do you mean? Because he hadn't seen it. And so when we showed him that, he said, let's talk. And that started the bottle price formula and those kind of things for us to move it from commodity pricing to specialty pricing. The price of the grapes depends upon the quality of the wine as measured by what the consumer would pay. Yeah. And we did that through the Grape Growers Association. And that was in 1975.
Yeah. And talk a little bit about Andrei Chilichev and maybe the introduction with him and Bob Steinhauer and kind of putting this renegade that's been out in the vineyard and this new kid coming along.
Well, Andre hated the idea that he couldn't do the vineyards anymore. He hated that idea. And so...
Because he believed that the winery needed to be in control of it?
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's the traditional. That's correct.
Right.
But he didn't have a chance. I mean, he went from 600 acres to 3,000 to including Inglenook and having union workers.
Right.
I mean, I don't know how well you knew Andre, but he's not put up with that.
Yeah.
So what we did is we put the young and the old together, Bob Steinhauer and Andre Chilichev, and they loved each other. Bobby, he called him Bobby, and they spent so much time. And a lot of people give Andre credit for a lot of things on the winemaking side, but I think he made an important contribution through us on the vineyard side too, working with Bob, the old and the new, doing stuff.
Yeah.
But he was great. He was great. He was.
Now, when you mentioned the fact that you were sort of pushing the Cabernet agenda, that seems completely crazy to those of us nowadays. But what was the thinking, and what were you thinking? I mean, why was Cabernet important to you back then, and why did you think that was the future of grapes? Because they were growing other things and even getting more money for other things.
Well, you remember, we had bought two wineries, Inglenook and Beaulieu, and both of them were big Cabernet wineries.
Yeah.
The history of Cabernet in California is the history of Beaulieu and Inglenook.
Right.
And so that was the business we bought and the varietal we needed to expand.
Yeah.
Because it had gone away from that. It had all gone to blends, and just
it never come much further. If you would look back at, and I've got the records here of how much Cabernet was here and who was producing it. I mean, Charles Krug was selling Chenin Blanc,
right?
And Martini was selling, I forget what he was selling, something, but nobody was selling Cabernet and nobody was growing.
Right.
So we needed Cabernet.
Yeah.
In the articles I've read, you talk a lot about going from a Bordeaux style of pricing and marketing to a Burgundian style.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Okay. We were now to the 70s, and when you got into the 80s, the best Cabernet wines from Napa were reserves. BV Private Reserve, Mondavi Reserve, all these, they were all blends. And the winemakers were all blending basically to the same consumer taste. So
what were they blending?
They were blending different Cabernets. And remember, up until 1983, you only had to have 51% Cabernet.
Right.
In a Cabernet, 49% could be other varietals. You only had 51% to call it Napa Valley, 49% could be other things.
I don't think a lot of people know that.
Right.
It sounds so crazy to us now.
It sounds so crazy now. I could tell you about the federal hearings. I think I testified 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
And the other thing they wanted to do, they wanted to make the North Coast 14 counties down to Santa Barbara. That was the basis of that labeling thing. But when we got involved and the consumer got involved, we said, wait a minute, there's some other things wrong here, like this 51%.
Yeah. So
that got changed. I think the hearings were in 76, 77, 78, and the change, they give you some buyout. So the change had to happen in early 80s. But that was one thing. But basically what they were doing, to answer John's question, was they were blending, and all blend. And so that the wine writers began to say, that's vanilla and chocolate. That's the Bordeaux way, Chateau Lafite, all those things are blends. And we said, how do you improve that? How do you make the wines better and more unique? And we say, let's try the Burgundian way, emphasizing terroir. And in that way, you'll get uniqueness, you'll get complexity in the wines. So we started that idea. And we also started buying vineyards with pedigrees with heritage, because if we're going to go terroir-based, you've got to buy the best terroir. You got to do that. But it was wine quality thing, basically, that started that shift. And today, if you look, 90% of the best wines are all vineyard desert. They're unique, they're complex, it's personality. Yeah. It changed the valley. It changed the way the valley presents itself.
Do you have any feelings on when should a wine be a vineyard designate? So, there's a lot of, and I've done this myself, call out a vineyard to just to let people know where it came from. Yeah. But maybe the vineyard doesn't have a lot of pedigree. Maybe it's a new young vineyard. It's become to the point where everything is a vineyard designate. Yeah. And I know when I was first in the business, just as you say, there were very few, but they were unique. Like, they were specific, and maybe not as good as the blended wine or as approachable, but they were unique, and that's why they were called out. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the one you're probably talking about is Heisenmoth's Vineyard, right, which has a major defect, I guess, unless you like that mint flavor.
Right.
And then Diamond Mountain but that was about all that was there. But
right,
the thing about when should be vineyard designated, it's when the ground, the terroir, is good enough to do that long term. Now, we have what we call heritage vineyards. And they're vineyards that were planted back in the 1800s. To Kalon was planted in 1868, Dr. Crane in 1858, L'Esprit was 18, all those things. My feeling has been about vineyards, for the best of the vineyards, is the total is more than the sum of the parts. You just can't say what the soil is and what the longitude is. You've got it's how they mix, the timing of all of that stuff. And if you really want to be sure of that, it has to be done over a long period of time. Different wine styles, different winemakers, different everything. And so that's when we went to buy these heritage vineyards, because we knew that over a period of time, they'd always produce the best of red wines. It wasn't Cabernet. Some of it was Cabernet, it wasn't. And so we felt we had the right to vineyard designate those. Now, we have other vineyards. I mean, for example, this vineyard is 250 acres, but only about 40 acres of it is vineyard designate. Okay. Great vineyards make great wines. I don't care whatever, they can do whatever they want, but if they don't make great wines, they're not great vineyards. Right. So we were looking for vineyards that had made great wines over a long period of time, and then we vineyard designated them, and that has that integrity. It's like the To Kalon situation. Mondavi has a trademark, and they put To Kalon on lots of things. But if it says Beckstoffer To Kalon, it came from ground that was owned by Hamilton Crab, was planted by Hamilton Crab, and the grapes from that was sold as To Kalon. That's integrity, and we fight for that integrity. And that's the same thing for these other vineyards. I believe that there are vineyards in Napa Valley that people don't know where they are, and the people farming who are of that quality, maybe not established, but the ground is there. So then it takes somebody to build that brand, but it has to make great wine. Yeah.
Well, let's get into To Kalon. How did you acquire that property? What was it that you tasted wines from that vineyard? You had been working with those vines, and then how did that opportunity present itself for you to actually purchase it?
That vineyard was BV number 4. BV bought that property in 1940 and had farmed it since. And BV never really wanted you to know what it went into private reserve and what didn't, but a lot of that did. And we started farming it we farmed it in 1970, started farming it in 71. Then when at a point in the early 80s, after we had bought the company, Hugh Blind decided they didn't want to be involved with the union anymore. So they kicked us out. So we weren't farming it anymore. But then Hugh Blind sold to Reynolds, and then it sold to Diageo. And that Diageo is part of Treasury. But Diageo owned it then. So in 1993, and this is, people think that, when I started the farming company, I got all the Hugh Blind land. I got no Hugh Blind land. 20 years later, in 1993, Hugh Blind decides we've got too much Cabernet. We need to get rid of some Cabernet. Commodity Cabernet.
And you could see the look on his face.
And so we had we had grape contracts to sell them things that they wanted some adjustments to that and all those kind of things. So they said we got 2,000 tons too much Cabernet. So we said, well, we'd like to buy that one. and Bob and Davy said he wouldn't pay the price. So we got to buy it in exchange with lots of stuff with the grape pricing, you know.
Yeah.
20 years later, 20 years after we originally purchased the vineyard.
Yeah.
We purchased this, I mean, again, because people say, you know, Andy Hubline made Andy rich, right? And so he did again. We bought the farming company in 1973, and we borrowed all the money. And you probably don't even remember, but in 73, the prime rate was 6%. We borrowed it all at prime plus 1. By 1975, it was 17%.
Ouch.
So we lost everything except the farming company in 78.
Wow.
They took it all back. And so we began to buy vineyards then. And Hubline, this was BV number 3, and Hubline did not want to be in the real estate business, the vineyard business. So they packaged this with a piece of property that we had bought across the street, which is the old keg properties, Round Pond. Yeah, Round Pond.
Right.
And sold it to the Connecticut Mutual Life Insurance Company. And insurance companies, they wanted to make a loan on it. We said, no, you got to buy it. So they bought it, but they don't hold things. Insurance companies don't hold property like that. So in 1988, 89, they wanted to get rid of it. And Hubline had a first right of refusal on it, but they didn't want any land either. So that's when I bought it from the Connecticut Mutual Life Insurance Company now. And this is 15 years after I bought the company in 1973. Okay. To finish that story, down in Canaris, Hubline had bought, I think they bought it about 1965 or something like that. Because Andre, I don't know, have you ever experienced the 1968 Beaulieu Pinot Noir?
I've only heard of it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. He produced that.
Right.
And so that was great. So they bought this property down there. Well, now, Hubline has now sold to Reynolds, to Diageo, and that's owned by Treasury. And Treasury can't get rid of it. I mean, they must have been on the market 4 years, 5 years. So finally we bought in 2017, I think in 2017, we bought BV number 5. So I ended up owning 3 of the Hubline properties, but nothing from Hubline.
Right.
I mean, nothing from Hubline, a long way of that.
More the fact that you were just paying attention.
I was paying attention, and we knew what it was like. You know, what the ground was like. Although it was, you know, the kind of thing is when we bought Toklon in '93, it was totally phylloxerated. I mean, they didn't want to spend the money to redo it.
Right.
You know, and that's part of the problem here. Well, the problem here was Connecticut Mutual just wanted out. And then with BV number 5, same thing. Needed to be replanted. They didn't want to spend the money.
Yeah. And phylloxera is sort of I mean, that's a big thread in the story that happened here in Napa Valley is you realize at some point you were going to have to replant everything.
Well, what's the biggest thing that happened to us? You know, we decided we needed to go, emphasize the terroir. But we couldn't have emphasized the terroir with those vines that existed before phylloxera. Right. You know, I've said often that, you know, up until phylloxera, we were farmers. We did what was done before. When phylloxera happened, all we had to do was replace the rootings. But we replaced the rootings and the scions, and we changed the whole trellis system. We became viticulturists. And so we're now able to mine that terroir. You have this great terroir, now you're able to mine it. And so it was late 90s before those vines began to really produce, and it was 2000, almost 2000, before we really began to do vineyard designate and make news about it.
Yeah. I mean, you got to reset, a do-over, a mulligan. You got to come and then do all the spacing the way you wanted and row orientation and all of those things.
And did you do all those?
We did all of those things.
Okay.
Yeah.
We brought science to it.
Yeah.
What rootstock did you go to?
We did. It used to be everybody used AXR. We used 10, 15 different rootstocks, and nobody knew what was right. It was drought resistant or it wasn't. It was in the weak soils or wasn't. Today, it's still nobody knows exactly. They're real good
You're
idea.
just kind of throwing a dart up against the wall.
Well, we're dealing with scientists now, and they knew whether they wanted more drought resistant, they wanted less vigorous, they wanted all different things. But these very technical situations. You might plant 3 different rootstocks in one. I'm sure there are more than maybe 3 or 4 rootstocks planted in. There's 250 acres. There's more than one rootstock planted here.
I think it's interesting. When my wife and I first started dating, she would always say, "I don't understand why the wine industry or the vineyard side isn't treated more like a commodity." And
It was.
And that's just it. I said, I think what the wine industry has been trying to do is not be a commodity, because you don't want to have these huge fluctuations and whatnot. And hearing you talk about that, I mean, it truly was a commodity at one point.
Sure.
Especially the fact that you wouldn't find out how much you're getting paid for the grapes until, halfway through the following year.
And you paid them some sort of average.
Right.
Yeah.
What a difference. I mean, what was then and is now. It's just so different.
Yeah.
And it seems so modern now and so antiquated back then, paying an average on a commodity price. It's crazy. But,
Well, and even imagine Napa back then, John, in the 60s was, chickens and eggs and cows and
the nut house.
That's right.
Napa was known more for Mola Avenue than it was for wine.
I had a great uncle that was actually in that place for a while.
I was sort of looking at you kind of funny there. But the guys, for example, I got friends around here who played sports and they went out of town. Where are you from? They said Napa. That was a Mola.
Yeah.
They knew them on basis of Mola Avenue.
Yep. It's a crazy house.
this is a story I don't know. So is it still open?
Yeah, still is. Still part of the system.
State Hospital.
And Reagan closed a bunch of them.
Right. He closed Sonoma. That's how Sonoma Development closed
He closed Mendocino and we bought it. When he closed, the Mendocino State Hospital State Hospital sat on 250 acres of ground, 600,000 square feet of floor space. Every piece of exposed metal was copper. Doors were oak and 8 inches thick. Everything was mission tile, the whole thing.
Wow.
Plus, they had 500 acres of beautiful agricultural ground. They raised hogs and pigs and all that kind of stuff.
So is that what is now the Buddhist temple up there?
Yes.
Yeah.
We sold it to the Buddhists.
Yeah.
We sold it to the Buddhists.
Yeah.
And that's a kind of an interesting story,
So
too.
I used to get a little bit of Chenin Blanc from a vineyard behind that.
Okay.
And it was 1940s planted Chenin. But the Buddhists bought it and allowed the grapes still to be farmed until 2 years ago. And now it's lying dormant, dying.
Away. Yeah.
But I've been to that and that facility or that campus looks exactly like Napa and Sonoma. So same era.
Same era.
You said there was an interesting story behind that.
The story is that we put together a deal for basically the Connecticut Mutual, Blackstone and me. We bought it. And I'll never forget, it cost the state of California, I don't know, $100 million to build that place in $1970 or turn of the century dollars.
Right.
And it was for sale, but nobody would buy it. So we went up to Sacramento and we bid $2 million. I'll never forget walking up the street in Sacramento there and thinking, do I know something they don't know, or do they know something I don't know?
Right.
I don't
It's
know.
a cemetery under there.
I mean, it's just nobody bought it. We got to buy it. But it had never, ever been on the tax rolls because it was owned by the state of California. We didn't figure that too much. But all of a sudden, we became aware that there's a tax date coming up. And think about it, it looks like Princeton University. I mean, it's this gorgeous place, and it's never been taxed. And we said, my God, if they come in here and tax these mission tile roofs and all this stuff, what are we going to do? Well, we better sell it quick. And so we tried to get the Mendocino State College to buy it. They wouldn't buy it. Nobody would buy it. Then we began to talk to churches. We talked to Jimmy Jones, who was, there's all sorts of churches in Mendocino County. And then all of a sudden, this group, it was 2 monks, one went to MIT and one went to Harvard, and the the Buddhists decided they wanted it. Wow. So we negotiated that for a long time, and I'll never forget, to make sure they did the right deal, one of the Buddhists walked from LA to Ukiah, but touch the knee every third step.
Walk.
To cleanse it, to cleanse the place, to cleanse the idea.
Wow.
So we're sitting here, we said, oh my God, what's going to happen now? And then we won the money, and they didn't have all the money. And so, how do you get a guarantee from and these are real Buddhists,
Right.
I mean, these are real Buddhists. How do you get some sort of a guarantee from them? So finally, and I swear she was from Vietnam, and this was foreign aid money. I don't know. So this Buddhist lady came over, and she had 80% of the cash, and I said, that's fine. I'll just hope you pay the rest of it. And they did.
Wow.
But it went off the tax rolls.
What was the tax that was due?
Nobody had ever figured it before. You think about it.
Right.
And $2 million, that's the price of a house these days around here.
Well, yeah, but it was 500 acres of farmland.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Plus this 250
Yeah.
of the other thing.
Amazing. What's it now? You say it's just...
It's a teaching Buddhist college.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And they've done beautiful work up there, and there's peacocks running all over the place, and
Yeah.
a huge gong. Remember we saw that?
Yeah.
Yeah, when the vineyards, I mean, some of it is, I remember seeing some Mourvedre or Carignan, I don't know what it was. It was like 8-10 feet tall.
Yeah,
There's some
Lodi
crazy
ladder.
stuff up there.
Definitely the Lodi ladder kind of look. Wow, that's interesting. That's a great story.
All right, so now how do you decide that you want to now kind of move on? Well, actually, I want to know, who are you the one that decides who gets to buy the grapes out of To Kalon, who gets to make wine out of there, or do you leave that to someone else that gets to?
No. Basic comes back here.
Okay.
We all everybody around here sells, sells.
Yeah.
But I get to make the decision.
Okay.
But the decision people ask, how do you determine it?
Yeah.
And the first thing is, who's the winemaker?
Yeah.
These are grapes that have to be made into wine, so we want to be sure that somebody can do that. And it can be an established winemaker, or it can be somebody who's just coming up, who looks like they have promise. And then we want to know who the owner is. Does he understand this business and the quality requirement, and it's expensive and things like that? That's basically how we decide who gets To Kalon.
How long is the list of applicants?
John, it's
Well, I don't know. I don't know
Yeah.
because, we don't have anything to sell. There's about 30 guys, in, 25 guys in there, and there's guys call every day.
but how many people want it is everybody.
Yeah, right. And does anybody ever drop out?
Yes. The people who come in, the people who come in the wine business with bright eyes and think they're going to do it and find out they got to sell it. Right. That somebody said there was over 1,000 SKUs of Napa Valley Cabernet. Now, there's probably only 5 SKUs of peanut butter. But why anybody would want to get in that business without, being not in the business was crazy. But you think about getting in that business, it's not.
It's the romance.
It's
the romance.
The romance goes away. It's like
Yeah.
the honeymoon, it goes away. And then you got to sell it. And you got to get on the road and sell it. And you got to entertain people. You got to do lots of stuff.
Yeah.
It's not out. It's easy to grow it, basically. It's easy to make it, basically. Hard to sell it.
Yeah.
Hard to sell wine,
Can we talk a little bit about the To Kalon versus To Kalon? The vineyard, the land, as opposed to the brand that was floated out there that I think now has gone away at least.
Well, I don't know if anything's gone away. To Kalon's famous forever. What happened was in 1989, Mondavi got a trademark for To Kalon and To Kalon Vineyard. And what that says is a trademark. And like Tim Mondavi said, we can put grapes in there from Nigeria if we want.
But who else? How do you get to do that? I'm curious. Like if we decided, let's say Monte Rosso Vineyard over in Sonoma, you could somehow trademark that?
You should not have been able to do that. Mondavi said in 89, it has no meaning. It has no historic meaning. It has no current meaning, and nobody challenged it.
How'd they get the name?
Huh?
How'd they get the name To Kalon?
Well, the land that Mondavi planted on is part of Hamilton Grabb's original To Kalon vineyard.
Yeah.
The original To Kalon.
What does To Kalon mean?
Well,
The name.
people, they said it doesn't mean anything, But then they've come back and everybody said that Crab said it meant the best or the highest beauty. Now, there's another story I like, which I like a whole lot better about Brad Tokalon.
That's the one we're going to go with.
It's a Greek name, but at the marriage feast of Cana, Jesus poured the bad wine first, the good wine second. So somebody said what Jesus said, we've had some wine now. Now let's have the Tokalon, which is the better wine. I like that better.
Yeah.
That's a better story. But I don't know where Crab got the name.
Well, what wine are we drinking, Brian?
So we already had the vice versa, the 2018 Beckstoffer, the Georgia 3rd Vineyard, and then what I just poured was the Kirk Vangie Vineyards Beckstoffer Missouri Hopper, which you probably drove by as we were coming up here.
Yeah,
you poured it for everybody but me. I noticed.
I'm sorry.
I
wasn't.
Your grandfather was at Imola,
right? And just one last thing. I mean, I guess I want to thank you guys for fighting the fight for that Tokalon. I mean, historic precedence means a lot, and with so much trademark ownership and just like kind of misleadingness in many businesses, but also the wine business. When you have Benziger I shouldn't say, I can say a Benziger family winery, and it's no longer family owned, and still trying to market itself as being small and local, but it's not. I mean, it's important to try to keep some consistency and some honor in our business. So anyway,
integrity.
So thank you for fighting that fight. Yeah, I just felt I needed to say that.
Well, Benziger actually is still Sonoma Mountain, and they are still right there and local, and they are owned by somebody, so the finances behind it are different. But I brought a question up earlier and was talking about foreign ownership. This is a listener question. What are your thoughts on China and other sources coming in here and buying land and buying it up? Obviously, they don't have the same concept that you do of Napa and locality.
Well, I don't know that the Chinese are here, but you have large corporations, a very American corporation, Constellation, and you have I guess they're still mostly Australian Treasury. There's very large corporations that had some interest in the wine business before, and that's one thing. And then you have LVMH coming in and buying Phelps, and they understand quality and things like that. And then you have the Cathayards who just came in. They own Smith Lafitte, and they bought Flora Springs. So it's a wine family buying a winery here. And those things are very different. Very, very.
Absolutely. Those seem fine.
Well, I don't know how fine it is for the big corporation. I don't know how much they value Napa Valley and all of those things. They're basically selling brands rather than selling Napa Valley.
Well, I thought that the wine family.
The wine family. That's very good, and that's fine. And for example, I guess Chateau Latour bought Islay. Right. And you'd think they'll do a good job. And it feels good. I remember when the Domaine Chandon people came in and bought winery Mums. I'm not Mums, but what am I thinking about? Right down in Yountville.
I'm thinking Schramsberg.
Not Schramsberg, but
it'll come to us.
But anyway, and the French said, "Hey, the Americans okay." And it's like when they came in and did Opus One. Right. They're beginning to say Americans okay, and that's great. That's international. That's great. How they do and whether they value the brand and value Napa Valley is another question.
Right. And again, it goes back to if they're doing it with integrity, it's not as important where it's owned if they're doing it with integrity.
But you talked about Tokalon. That's owned by Constellation.
Right.
Bob Mondavi said he would never promote a vineyard. He was going to promote the Robert Mondavi brand. He had no interest in vineyard designation or anything like that. He owned more of Crab's Tokalon than I do.
Right.
Now, after the success we've had with it, now they're beginning to promote Tokalon and putting it on everything.
Right.
Which they can do because they have the trademark.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about that Napa Valley value and the values in the valley itself. How has it changed over the last, I mean, you've been here quite a while, but over the last 10 or 20 years, it's really gone through some dramatic changes.
In terms of values?
Values and the area itself.
Okay.
I mean, it's kind of an adult Disneyland for wine freaks right now. And, you know, it's just changed. Hotels, restaurants, people, it's, you know.
I like what Tor said, that they used to here in Napa used to think as long as they were gone by sundown.
Oh, don't let the sun set on the tourists.
Don't let the sun set on the tourists, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was the old, they give them some wine to drink, but
Right.
no place to eat, no place to sleep.
I mean, it's changed a lot since then.
It's changed, but also, John, let me tell you, it's a great place to live.
Yeah.
You can say all that you want about all that other stuff, and it's paradise. Then there's some trouble in paradise, but it's still the best. It's a great place to live. I mean, God, look around here.
Yeah.
It has changed. It has changed dramatically. It was not wine country before because of what we said, never let the sun set on the tourists. So we had no inns and no restaurants. And to be wine country, you got to have hospitality. So that has developed, and that has developed on the same quality as the wine. And it's Cabernet country now. And that's premium as it is. But it's very expensive here. Everything is very expensive here. And it's very expensive a lot of places. A lot of wonderful places are very, very expensive.
That's why they're wonderful places.
That's why they're wonderful places. But think about this, and I've said this to all the world. Napa Valley, 60 miles from San Francisco, this beautiful place, by local ordinance, all of the primary use of all the land in the unincorporated area has to be agriculture. Now it's everywhere else, it's urban or commercial uses. So what's happened here is that, one, when we started out, we had the ag preserve, and that limited people to, was from 20 acres or 40 acres, one house, one winery. And that was very important in the early days because you absolutely could not make money owning and operating a vineyard here when we came. The only people who could do that were people who had no investment, and those were passed down through the family, or the wineries who could lose money on the grapes and make money on the wine. And if that had continued, Adam Smith was right, that if an investor is not making a reasonable return on his investment, he's going to move that money, he's going to move that investment. And they would have done it. Absolutely. No local ordinance is going to force people to keep in a bad investment. But we did what we did, and what the people did is they first give credit to the winemakers who made great wine after phylloxera and charged for it, charged high prices for it. And then what we did through our pricing system, we began to change the grapes from being commodity to being a specialty product. The value is based on what the consumer will pay for it. So the price of grapes all of a sudden became a percentage or a fraction of the price of the wine, which is now very high. So all of a sudden the price of grapes go up, the return to vineyards, the value of vineyards and the economic return of the vineyard goes way up. So the vineyards now become the long-term economic highest and best use of the land. Not a commercial use, not an urban use. And on that basis, they'll stay in vineyards.
Yeah.
The local ordinance still helps, but that's what keeps Napa green. That's what keeps this place. And I say to people, and it's very fashionable today to say the people in Napa are greedy and all that kind of stuff. But if you buy a bottle of wine at a very high price here, you get value, you get a wonderful wine, plus you keep this place like it is. And the people who have done surveys say most of the tourists love the surroundings more than they like the wine. It's amazing. I mean, they said that. I mean, people have done those surveys.
Yeah. So, and you can imagine, in the broad expanses of Napa Valley, how it could have been nothing but houses and commercialism,
Silicon
all
Valley
feeding down. It could have very easily.
It was on that road. It was on that road.
Highway
Sonoma
29
would dominate.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Well, Sonoma has, it is traffic. It is expensive, and so I understand why people would go to Sonoma.
Yeah. But even Sonoma has seen the same thing happen, and I think the reason why there's value there with those vineyards staying in production and whatnot.
It is. Yeah.
Because Sonoma County in general could have been a lot more housing.
Well, it's so interesting. You get up around that 101 corridor, and it's just apartment, building, commercial, apartment, commercial.
And all very new.
Yeah.
So.
It's urban sprawl, all the way up to.
Hey, what do you guys think of these wines?
Well, I was going to ask about that. Yeah.
They're both beautiful, and I realized I probably should have poured the Vengi before the vice versa, but it's got a little more acidity going on in there.
The first one was the Vengi. The first one was the vice versa.
First one was the vice versa.
And the second one was the George III. This is Missouri Hopper. This is George III.
And I like the first one. It's just better for my palate.
John's a Bordeaux lover.
Okay.
I've had to convert him to some other grapes other than Cab. But I could see that, of course, John, that the vice versa being right up your alley.
Yeah, absolutely.
Me, I like to salivate a little bit. So I really like that more intense acidity.
They're both really beautiful wines. And I think you should allow each of those winemakers to continue making wine from the grapes.
Well, and Bart, right when you smell these wines, you know where they're from.
Right.
Especially the vice versa. As soon as I put my nose in it, I mean, it's.
But the thing that they're both 2018s.
Yeah.
They're both farmed by us, same way.
Yeah.
Well,
they're very different.
Yeah.
That's terroir.
Yeah.
That's what happens here. This wine of all the heritage vineyards has more red fruit in it than.
So how different is the terroir between these two?
Missouri Hopper is the south end of the Oakville appellation, and it is cooler than it is up here. Here, this is right here. This is Rutherford right here, so it's cooler. And what I find is, as you go north, you get a little more clay in the soil as you come back and forth, and it's warmer up here. In Napa Valley it gets warmer, and you're good. What, 3 miles difference between those two?
And there's probably times where the fog makes it down there, but doesn't make it up here.
Yeah, and the valley bends, and it bends about down there.
Yeah.
So it's all those things.
Yeah.
So on farming, I mean, I think I heard you right. You said, we farm it the same way. I mean,
basically the same.
Basically,
way.
I mean, so you have a unique set, or you have your set of parameters that you operate within, and then you change obviously year to year what you're seeing going on in the vineyard. But for the most part, it's all kind of the same farming philosophy.
Basically the same farm. Some of us cane, prune, cordon, depending on different things. And we have in the Napa Valley, we have 1,000 acres here. 500 of it is the heritage vineyards. 500 is all the basic Cabernet and 100 or red grapes and all. But there's a guy who farms the heritage vineyards, except for this one. There's a guy who farms Carneros, and there's a guy who farms this in Melrose. So they're a little bit different too.
Sure.
All of them a little bit different. And then the overall guy used to farm all of Napa, but the general manager here is also there's at least 2 trained viticultural eyes in every place.
But no real mountain vineyards. Everything's I don't want to generalize it as valley floor, but generally
the benchlands for sure.
Yeah.
I never got involved with the hillsides here around because I couldn't get any uniformity with all the soil streaks that are here.
Right.
You can't get any uniformity in the vineyard, so we stayed out of there. And frankly, if you think about it, you tell me where the great wines came from Napa. They didn't come from the hillside. There used to be that controversy, but you can't find somebody on Harlan. Harlan's a blend.
Right? Yeah.
I mean, but tell me where the great mountain vineyards are. They're all on the valley floor and the benchland. But to follow that story, after we finished replanting Napa after phylloxera about 1994, 95, we thought phylloxera would go to Mendocino County, and it didn't. So we said we want to grow, and we want to grow Cabernet Sauvignon. So we looked for as much land as we could find in Mendocino County, but couldn't find a lot. That's pear ground up there. And so you can look, and we want to be up here. We want to stay, we've been here long enough. We saw the whole development of the Central Coast, and we didn't want any part of that. And I'm going to divert a little bit, is that the business on the Central Coast a few large sellers and a few large buyers. That's one economic system. And if you're not big guy in your family business, that's tough.
Right.
Up here, there's a whole lot of small buyers and a whole lot of small sellers. So we want to stay up here. Secondly, that I believe that the good Cabernet from California or America goes north of the Bay of San Francisco. So we want to stay there. So we're in Mendocino. We can't find anything. We can't go to Sonoma. We decided we'd go to Lake County.
Yep.
Lake County had a terrible reputation.
Yep.
Still not very good. But so we went over there. We started looking differently, digging holes. And we farm here at about 300 to 400 feet above sea level. Over there, we started 1,400 and go to 24. We're farming hillsides over there.
Right.
So while we wouldn't farm hillside here, we will there. Difference, all the soil in the Red Hills district is blown on by the eruption of Mount Kanakta. There's no soil streaks.
It's all uniform.
That all red, full of obsidian. It's perfect Cabernet land.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we started buying the hillsides over there.
Yeah.
And so we did it because we wanted to grow Cabernet. Plus, my feeling was that Napa Cabernets are just getting very expensive. And when we started, it was 100. They're going to be 100 plus, and you know what they are now. Where do you find the really good $60 to $80 bottle of California Cabernet?
Sonoma, if you can find it.
And there's that much.
Yeah.
Right.
But where are you going to, and Mendocino's that much.
Yeah.
Where are you going to find your volume? We got volume in Lake County with those soils, which are just perfect. So that was one of the main motivations for wanting to grow and to grow in the Red Hills.
And who are those customers up there?
Those customers now are big people, the Gotts and the Hesses and the Gallos and those people.
Mm.
We sell about 35% of that as grapes. We sell 65% as bulk wine to all sorts of people.
Right.
And that's good business. It's not the business we want to be in, but it's business. But our job going forward is to create a brand for the Red Hills.
Yeah.
Now, several years ago, we set up a program. It's a windy road going up there. We couldn't get the wineries to go up, so we said, let's get the winemakers to go up. So we started out talking to 10 winemakers, all of whom had made $150 bottle of wine. We ended up with 7. And we said, look, we will give you an acre of grapes, 3 to 4 tons of grapes. You make it under these protocols, and the protocols we established were for $150 bottle of wine. And then the wine's yours. It's yours. Sell it. Do whatever you want. But we want to see if we can establish we have the quality up there to produce an 80 to 100 bottle.
That's quite an investment, isn't it? From you.
Well, we've got 2,000 acres up there. That's a bigger investment.
That's right.
And so what happened was that there's only one who actually put it on the market because the other guys, they all had day jobs. And like we said, easy to make it, easy to grow it. They found out what it would take to sell it, and that's not what they really wanted to do. But we established the quality. We established the quality was there.
Yeah.
And that's extremely important to get to the next step to build an appellation up there, build a brand.
Yeah.
Well, that's where we are right now.
Aren't you doing something with UC Davis up there as well?
Yes. This is a climate change experiment.
Yep.
We've got, I think it's 10 different clones and 10 different rootstocks and the permutations and commutations. See how they affect, how climate change affects them. And from my point of view, see what the changes in quality might be.
Yeah. So the goal is not to have Lake County on the bottle; it's to have Red Hills on the bottle.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. We because the Lake County appellation was so bad, we created our own appellation. There's 8 of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's really amazing. That's what it took to do that.
And I swear I've had wine that said Red Hills on it.
Yeah. Obsidian.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
What was that?
Obsidian Ridge.
Casey?
Yeah.
Okay.
Peter Molnar.
Peter Molnar.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're working on getting Peter on the show also.
Yeah.
So with all the advances in viticulture, and it's harder and harder to find labor, I assume, for you, just like everybody else. Are you liking some of these new mechanical harvesting.
We're all fascinated with
Yeah, I mean, all of these, all the new vineyard equipment, for under the row or under the vine,
Mowers
cultivation and
things,
mowing and stuff. Are you guys? I mean, now I hear that there's a mechanical harvester that will work on hillsides. Do you have any thoughts or clarity on that?
100% of our grapes in Lake County picked by mechanical harvester, and about 98% in Mendocino, none here.
Okay.
But we've just announced the purchase of 4 electric tractors. Okay, this is all part of our carbon sequestration gas thing, and also we've just bought some mowers that go under the vine. You see all these strips.
Yep.
And we got to find a way to mow under that so we don't have to use pre-emerge or anything like that.
Yeah.
So the answer is yes. I mean, mechanical harvesters, the wineries around here don't want their grapes picked.
Right.
Again.
I didn't think that was going to be the
just
answer.
in terms of sustainability, we don't use glycosides anymore. But we do use some other chemicals, and we have a problem cleaning under the vines. So you got to get a mower who will go under there and won't tear out the vines.
Right.
So we just bought a couple, and they've been working for a week. And so we think mechanical means of cleaning under the vines. Now you could burn it, you could put electricity there, but we're trying to find a mower that will go under there. Plus, the cosmetics around here, everything, they should look clean.
I know.
Well, that's not going to look so clean anymore.
Yeah.
We're going to do what we need to do. And people are going to get used to it, looking at it, and it's going to say to them, sustainability.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that's just, as you say, the optics on it. The tourists will expect it to see it a certain way. Yeah. If we start training them that, it doesn't have to look that way.
There is a better way.
Yeah. I mean, there's another way.
Yeah.
We'll all individually decide what's better for us. Right?
And when they see these things, and how does it get? Somebody said, well, we put a chemical on it. Well, they don't like that.
Right.
They don't like that.
Right.
So and we don't like it either. I mean, we don't.
Yeah.
Sure.
If we can, but certain things like certain bugs and things we have to use.
Right.
There's around here, in terms of, how do I say, sustainability or whatever, there's biodynamics, whatever that is.
Right.
There's organic.
Right.
There is sustainable. There's Napa Green.
Yep.
There's fish family farming.
Yep.
We say we're responsible. We're responsible farmers, which includes be responsible to the vineyards, to the earth, but also be responsible to our people, to our clients, to our community, all that kind of stuff, because that sustainability thing just gets very confusing and becomes a more marketing tool than anything else.
Right? How many people work for you, for the farming company?
There's probably permanent people in each county. There's about 20.
Yeah. Okay.
But then we crew up,
right?
Different times a year, to a couple of hundred each place.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And these little mechanical mowers are we talking like a Roomba? Like for...
No, it's something that it's an attachment to a tractor, and they have sensors that tell it to move underneath the vine. And some of the early versions of them were very, very hard on the vines.
Really? Yeah.
Didn't do quite frankly a very good job. But they seem to be getting better and better. I mean, it's kind of the same thing with mechanical harvesters. It used to be mechanical harvesters. It was just
tap you.
It was just juice,
brutal,
and the quality on those has really changed. Also,
really changed.
I'm sure you know more than I do.
These have a thing that goes in and out, and then goes around the vine. And the problem is very easy to do it, except right around the vine.
Yeah.
And so then the closer you get to like he's saying, you begin to beat up the vine.
Yeah.
Old vines don't count; they're tough enough, but the young vines count. So I think we're probably going to leave those cartons on them for another year or so.
Yeah. But doesn't that make sense? The Roomba that people use to vacuum their homes, and it has a little sensor on it. Well, couldn't you just turn one of those loose with some blades on it out in the vineyard?
How big's your backyard?
I don't know it.
He lives in a housing development in Roanoke Park, so
but that
he doesn't quite understand.
That's what we're doing to a certain extent, but it's guided by tractor. We need that power.
Yeah. Interesting.
Excuse me. What do you see happening in the future?
Yeah, what are you excited about in the future?
Besides Red Hills.
I'm excited about Red Hills. And
I'm excited
about it. The
about
kind of thing is that, everybody's worried about climate change. climate change. And if you look at the history, not only of the grape business, look at the history of America. We've won, and we beat other people with technology. And that's the same thing. I maintain that we have gotten to where we are in the vineyard business here and in the winery business on the back of technology. What we've done in the vineyards, what they've done in the wine, we'll do it again. So I'm excited about see that technology work. Yeah. I'm really excited to see that technology work. I'm excited to get more for us in Napa, more non-Cabernet vineyard designates than we've got. We have 121 vineyard designates. 102 are Cabernet, the rest are Chardonnay, Merlot, things like that. Yeah. But the real excitement is to build that brand in Lake County. Yeah. And to a certain extent for that Cabernet, we've got a wonderful ranch in Mendocino growing Cabernet.
And whereabouts in Mendocino?
It's in Hopland.
Okay.
It's in Hopland. Police Creek.
Aren't you doing Chardonnay and Pinot as well, or no? Not in...
We do Pinot. We do Pinot in Canaris. We do lots and lots of Chardonnay in Mendocino County. Yeah. But Pinot needs to be grown by vintners. It's small. It doesn't yield. It rots. Hey, let them grow it. we got a little bit. We I mean, we got like 30 acres or something down in Canaris, 30, 40 acres. But Pinot's not something a grower wants to grow.
Yeah.
And what do you like to drink? What's in your cellar?
What's your
that's not beyond all of your
in private?
Well,
you don't
my
have to
wife
be in
doesn't
public.
like me to say this, but I like things that are old and expensive.
There you go.
So do I. But I've got lots of Cabernet that I've got. So
You drink Cabernet mostly.
I drink Cabernet, but I drink Scotch and I drink gin and tonic and I drink vodka. I drink beer and depending on what it is. But when I go home tonight, I'm not going to drink one of these Cabernets. I'm going to have a nice glass of Sauvignon Blanc.
Right.
Or if I drink Sauvignon Blanc 2 or 3 nights in a row, I want something with a little flavor. I drink Chardonnay.
Right.
Yeah.
Or something somebody's given me.
Right.
Somebody gives me a Riesling and what the hell does that taste like? But I really like wine. Right. I mean, I can't imagine having a meal without it. And I really like Cabernet. I'm not telling you anything. Over some past years, it just got too big. It was not a pleasant drinking experience. So you avoid those and just keep on going. And a lot of them was made from our vineyards.
So you see the wines from your vineyards, that style kind of shifting.
They're lightening up.
Yeah,
they are like alcohol's lightening up. And when you said that before, the vintner said, "Oh, they're balanced wines." Well, they were balanced wines, but they were balanced at too high a level.
Right.
But it's all about, a great wine, in my view, has to do 2 things. One, it has to stand the test of time, and 2, it has to complement food. Right. But some of those Cabernets, it just
got to be too much.
It just got
So now, what are you doing in your free time? We know Tor will grab a rod and go out and do a little fly fishing, which I don't know if you know, but I'm going to tell you, we're going to go out and take some pictures of Tor, I think, on Friday. One of our friends works for a fly fishing magazine, and he was saying that we might be able to go out in the vineyard and do a little casting.
Tor's a fly fisher. Tor's a good friend of mine. I guess he told you that. Yeah. But I used to fly fish, but not like him. Yeah. He and Susan went down to Patagonia recently and fly fished. I would go up to Henry's Forks every now and then. But Tor goes to basketball games with me and football games with me. And I used to run a lot. I used to marathons and all that stuff. I can't do that anymore. But I like to be outside.
What are your favorite basketball and football teams?
Well, the Warriors.
Okay,
good. Thank you.
Good.
Big game tonight.
Yeah.
Tonight.
Last one, right?
No.
2-2?
No. It's 2-2. Yeah.
7 games.
I thought it was 5.
You got to win best 4.
Next to last, John. We hope.
Okay. Yeah, right.
Well, I've been around long enough. We're season ticket holders at the 49ers, the Giants, and the Warriors.
Nice.
And we've had great times with the 49ers in the 90s and then the Giants in the 2000s. Yeah. And now the Warriors. It's just, so I'll do that.
Yeah.
I do that. And I get grandkids and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't used to ride horses and run, and I don't do that anymore.
Right. Well, we appreciate you inviting us here today.
Thank you.
Are we done?
It's been fun.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's more wine to drink, John, so you're probably a little disappointed.
I just thought we ought to talk about these specifically because the second one you poured has opened up so much.
Oh, I'm sure.
And it's still got that juiciness.
John, I'm hoping that he's going to let us take these back to Sonoma.
Yeah, you can take those with you. Take
Well,
those
we
with you.
brought a Cabernet.
Yeah.
And where's that from? Who's vineyard?
That's probably from the Simon's Vineyard,
Yes.
which is in between Phil Couturi's house and Robert Kamen's house. So over there on Moon Mountain. And then that Grenache is sort of an odd story. That's the one with the real pretty fancy
The angels.
label with the wings on there.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of Grenache planted up in the Oakville Ranch that all goes to 16600, and that's a project they did with a gentleman named Philippe Cambi from France, and so that's as far as we know the only Grenache produced out of Oakville Ranch.
Yeah, I think we sell grapes to somebody called Simon.
Oh, really?
I think so.
It's the people that own this vineyard. They make wine, but they don't sell it. I don't know exactly what they do with it all.
Okay, all right. So I don't know.
They make wine and don't sell
I
it.
think that I think it's just self-consumption.
I think it's
Yeah, okay.
family.
Maybe it's different then.
Well, they've figured out the perfect wine business model. Is it's fun to make, and then don't bother even trying to sell it.
Yeah. Give it to your friends. Yeah.
That's right. If you can work that out, boy, you've really made it here.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you if you had a favorite out of everything you have had a chance to drink in Napa and Sonoma and around the world. Do you have a favorite?
No. You know, the thing is, you remember the experience. I drank some wonderful wines when I was having a whole lot of fun. And I drank some great wines when I wasn't having a whole lot of fun.
Yeah.
And so the wine with the good fun is the one I remember.
Yep.
But I remember the experiences more than the wines.
That's a great way to look at it.
Have you traveled over to France and Italy? And what's your favorite spot around France?
There it comes.
In the country.
Oh, yeah, me
In
too.
the country.
Loire. I love the Loire. I love down around Avignon and the Rhone region.
Down there, but when I go, I generally go to enjoy the place rather. I mean, visit with some wineries, but it would be somewhere down there in Aix, in Provence. It would be Provence for sure, and then I love Florence.
Yeah, it's a beautiful spot,
Florence,
isn't it?
yeah, all there.
Amazing.
I've been to Palio 3 times. You know that's a horse race in Siena.
No.
Oh, that's the best. All bareback, all amateur, all cheating. You can cheat. You can do anything you want. It's totally Italian.
From point A to point B, right?
You go around a circle.
Oh, okay.
Around a circle, yeah. And and it's all bareback. And one of the corners is like that. And they pad the stands because the horses throw riders off and all that shit.
I imagine a little betting goes on.
Unbelievable bit. Yeah. I mean, like you say, you can cheat. You can do anything you want to. You can hit the ride, hit it with your tag anything you want.
I'm gonna have to.
I mean, you can make deals. You know, it's very Italian. Yeah.
Why don't we have that in America?
you do. You call it politics. Nah.
Are you a car guy at all? You get over to Italy. Do you like the Ferraris over there and Maseratis?
Well, you know, I say I'm not, but I just sold my Maserati because I wasn't driving it. I need a place to drive it. I've got a 31 Ford pickup, 1931 Ford pickup.
Nice.
Which I don't drive either. This I got to get rid of.
So what's your daily driver?
Oh, well, that car's out there. I have a Porsche.
There you go.
Yeah.
911?
No, it's a truck. It's
like an
hearse.
SUV.
It's a hearse. It's an SUV.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The Cayenne?
Cayenne, yeah.
Yeah, those are nice cars, man. They do a great job.
They're just too big. They're too big. Yeah, I wish I hadn't. I had a Lexus. I loved the Lexus, and then I hated the grill that they did.
Oh,
So
yeah,
then,
it's ugly.
but my next car will be electric. My Lexus was a battery hybrid.
Yeah.
But next going to be electric. Yeah.
Lots of changes going on out there with electric. I mean, so many people. It used to be Tesla only. That's it. And now I saw that Hyundai, I'm not particularly hot on buying a Korean car, just because I think it's not a higher quality. But they want to be number 2 and in the electric market immediately. Yeah. Everything's coming out. You're not going to be able to buy
well, didn't the governor say
combustion.
by 2035 you can't?
That's what he said.
Can't buy.
That's what he said.
They always throw some dates out there.
And then they always extend them too.
Yeah.
Hey, I wanted to tell you that there's actually, because of the Presidio is why I'm here today.
Really?
My father was in Vietnam, and when on his way back, they stationed him at the Presidio. He's from Ohio, and while he was there, met my mom, got her pregnant, and then ended up staying here.
Well, that's great.
Yeah. But he's got some really nice memories of being stationed at the Presidio. And it's beautiful driving through there now.
What a stunning spot on earth.
And
man.
Tor came back from Vietnam. He ended up there.
Yeah, we spoke with him about that.
Yeah, I was there before. Well, when did your dad come through?
So
he's coming back from Vietnam. It's in the 70s.
So I'm thinking 68, 69, something like that.
Well, Tor came 69. I was there 61 to 63.
Yeah.
It's much simpler.
Yeah.
That's everything. But it's still it was a wonderful post. This
Yeah.
whole place is. I mean, I know it's expensive. I know the people are crazy. I know all that kind of stuff. But it's wonderful.
There's a reason we're here.
Northern
Reason we're still
California.
here.
It's just wonderful.
There's a reason I moved out here after 50 years in Chicago and New York City.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm tired of concrete, and I like the green.
Yeah.
This is pure and simple as you can get it. This is a green haven. That's it. It's beautiful.
Well, I tell you the thing. We're born and raised in the South. And in the South, it's who your family is. We would be fine there. Well, we cousins would go to school in New England. Don't care where you're born, but where'd you go to school? You go to Harvard or Dartmouth or Brown or what? Out here, I don't care where you're born. I don't care where. What are you doing for me now? Now that is kind of superficial in a lot of ways, but it's also kind of exciting in a lot of ways because they're the people who were wherever they were from. They were the active group there, and they said, "This, North Dakota is not exciting enough for me. I'm going to California."
Right.
And you come out here.
Right.
And then so it's like everything else. It's the people. More than the weather, more than anything, it's the people. Yeah.
Well, there certainly is a different attitude out here. I just have to, and I enjoy it.
And you've embraced it fully, John.
Look, I'm enjoying myself here.
Good.
Retirement and having fun, but I've got more friends out here than I had certainly in the advertising business in Chicago and New York. That's a little crazy. It's a crazy job. It was very Mad Men.
Yeah.
However, the feel out here and the vibe is just wonderful. Especially in Sonoma, it's a very slow town.
Yeah.
It is. It's just, and it wants to stay that way.
Yeah.
They don't let the big box stores in. They don't. They really are very careful about their development, and especially with the green belt around town. There can't be urban sprawl until you get up to Santa Rosa. Yeah. And, the land is too valuable around here to build apartments.
Yeah.
When it's vineyard, it's like going to Bordeaux or Burgundy, any of those places in France where every single little yard has a vineyard in it.
Yeah.
And it's been passed on for so long. I think that's probably why the French wine is less expensive for the most part, because they don't have the big tab to finance the land. Yeah. What's an acre of planted vineyard worth around here these days?
One just sold for $1 million.
$1 million acre. Okay. Not too shabby, huh? Yeah. How long before, there's that old joke. How do you make $1 million in one? You start with 2, all right?
You sell a piece of land for $1 million. Andy.
You can ask Ren about that.
Right.
Well, Ren's been involved in that. You know?
Ren. Yeah, Ren sold it. He and Gene Phillips sold it.
Yeah. What do you think of these the really extreme cult wines that charge so very much for what they're producing?
You mean like Chateau Lafite and Chateau Latour?
I'm talking like Screaming Eagle.
Way more than they're worth. Is that what you're talking about?
Figeac, Petrus. No, I was really talking about Screaming Eagle because they're the most visible one.
Well, they sell 15 cases or something like that, and somebody, Parker, loved them, and so that's how it works.
Yeah. Well, it's all about marketing luxury goods. Who was that? Tor was really pushing that concept. It's a luxury good. It's a Ferrari.
It is.
You don't have to buy it, but if you want it, it's there.
Right. Well, it's like a car. Are you buying transportation? You're buying a statement. Right. And the one, and that I think for the palates around this table, you really can tell the difference. But a lot of palates, they can't tell the difference. They just need that to show off. To do that. And that's fine. I mean, we saw Smirnoff like that forever. Right. And Lancers. Right. So it's all the deal. But thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Absolutely,
Andy,
Thank you for coming.
Thank you
Much
very much for your
appreciated.
hospitality.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
All right. Any shout outs?
Not at this point. I think we see if we can get back across the county line without anyone stopping us. And,
I've got my papers in order, man.
They'll let you go that way. It's easy.
And just to let listeners know that
Yeah.
Andy said it was okay. We are going to get some info out to you next week, starting to plan Grenache Day in September, but it's all sort of come together. So once I have a one sheet that I can read to everyone,
There you go.
we'll actually put that all together. But you're going to want to plan your vacation.
All right. Thank you, Andy.
Okay, thank you.
Take care.
All right, have a good
drink
rest
more,
of the day.
drink more Beckstoffer Cabernet.
There you go. There you go.